Yes, we've all sung it many, many times, haven't we? We are young and free. Now, it's that word young that has caused some consternation over many, many years, many, many months. People, especially who are Indigenous or who have sympathy with the Indigenous cause, say that that's exclusive, that turns our back on the ancient history of Indigenous people in this country. Why sing young and free when we've got the oldest living culture in this country that goes back eons? So the suggestion was made earlier this year by none other than the great Olympian Cathy Freeman that we should sing one and free. Not young and free, but one and free. I told you in February that I agreed wholeheartedly with that. Now the cause has been taken up by the New South Wales Premier again. Here she is, Gladys Berejiklian.
I just feel hurt for people that don't feel the anthem includes them. It's just a word change. When I was a very young child, I remember it was Australian sons, let us all rejoice. We're mad Australians all, let us rejoice. So I think it's appropriate just to consider our Indigenous population. It's very small and symbolic, but I think every step matters. Respect and dignity matters a lot and goes a long way.
Yes, it's a minor change. I don't think we lose anything. I don't think this is bowing to a woke push. I don't think this is something pushed by radicals. I think this makes sense. We're not a young country anyway. We're about the 10th oldest functioning democracy. So in terms of nation state, we're not even a young country. We certainly are an ancient country. We certainly do want to include Indigenous culture and Indigenous people in our national anthem. If we can sing one and free, then why not? I think it's a very, very inclusive thing to do. And our good friend Warren Mundine shared his thoughts on this on Sky News earlier today.
I voted for that national anthem when we had the plebiscite, and I still will defend that national anthem. But that one change, I think, helps in this whole process. We are one nation, we are one people, we are all one together in Australia.
Yeah, now I know a lot of people want a different national anthem and some people want to get rid of the word girt. Whatever, have those debates into infinity if you like. But at the moment we're talking about changing young and free to one and free. I say all in, let's do it. Let's just start singing it anyway, whether they make it official or not, because it is inclusive, it is true, and it's one small step we can make towards being a little bit more tolerant and inclusive in this country. So let us know what you think. But the feedback I've been getting after writing about this in The Australian today is that most people think it's a no-brainer. Let's just do it. So sing it loud and strong next time you're singing the national anthem. Let's go to Canberra now and catch up with Liberal Senator for Tasmania, Claire Chandler. Good to speak to you again, Claire. Well, you'd have no problem with that little change to the lyrics of our national anthem, would you?
No, I think it seems like a very sensible change, Chris. I do think that any changes to our national anthem shouldn't just be decided by politicians or journalists or people speaking on the news each day, but it should be a fulsome conversation with the Australian community. And look, if the feedback that you've been receiving following your piece in the paper today has been positive, then that is something that could be looked at some point in time. But yes, it seems a very minor change, and I think not only goes to embracing our Indigenous heritage, but also references the fact that Australia is a proud multicultural country and that we are unified as one in that front. I do like the sentiment of it.
Yeah, good on you. Let's see what happens with this. There seems to be quite a bit of bipartisan support for this minor change. Now, talking about the pandemic, Claire, you, of course, come from Tasmania. Tasmania, understandably, I suppose, as an island state, closed itself off pretty quickly. Looking at starting to open up with travel between Victoria, which, of course, is crucial. There's so many linkages between Tasmania and Victoria normally. That'll be a good step, and really it ought to happen as soon as possible, shouldn't it? There's virtually no community transmission left in Victoria.
Well, look, I said quite early on, Chris, when Tasmanian Premier Peter Gutwein flagged the 1st of December as the possible date to open up to Victoria that if the situation in Victoria in terms of coronavirus improved more quickly than anticipated, then that date should be brought forward. And I'm certainly very glad to say today that the Premier has brought that date forward to the 27th of November, which means that people coming to Tasmania from Victoria won't be required to quarantine anymore. I mean, we have seen the devastating impact that these border restrictions have had on small businesses, and certainly that's been the response I've received in Tasmania. So I think that this announcement today from Peter Gutman will be very welcomed within the Tasmanian community.
What about what's happening in the rest of the country? You've still got Queensland saying nobody from Sydney can go up there for holidays. That's crushing to so many people in Queensland. That's crushing businesses and livelihoods. You've got Western Australia still closed off to the rest of the country. Again, this keeps families and communities apart. It crushes small business. There's really human effects from all this, and it's obviously not necessary. How do we stop our state governments from overreacting to a health crisis like this?
Well, I think you only have to look at those comments from Gladys Berejiklian, the Premier of New South Wales, that you played right up the top of your show today, that state governments do need to show compassion in these situations, and they do need to be cognizant of the risks to, like you say, not just the economy and not just small businesses, but to the livelihoods of people that have been impacted by these border closures. I mean, you only have to look at what is happening at border towns along the Victorian border, or hear the stories of, so many Tasmanians I know who live in Melbourne and haven't been able to visit their family back on our island state over the last few months. It has been quite devastating. So I think it's just a very simple case of listening to people and listening to small businesses and responding accordingly when the health restrictions are allowing this to happen.
Do you think that the federal government should take some action here? Obviously, there's all sorts of consternation about the constitutional powers here and who has responsibility, and the National Cabinet really has no authority. It's just a matter of trying to get a consensus. Do we need to make some changes so that in the future the National Cabinet or the federal government actually has control here and we don't have state borders put up as hard barriers arbitrarily?
Well, I guess all of these things will be considered as we review our coronavirus response at some point in the near future. But we do have to remember, Chris, that Australia has dealt with coronavirus, I think, incredibly well in comparison to other places around the world. And obviously those border restrictions have been hard, but we are now in a position where they are being lifted sensibly because we are getting this virus under control. So I think National Cabinet has worked well. It has been a good forum to thrash out some of these ideas, and I'm certainly glad to see state governments starting to follow suit and starting to bring their borders up, just as Tasmania has flagged that they're going to do today.
Yeah, we will see. It's cost us, I don't know, $300 billion. Airports are still empty. People still can't come and go from this country, and the virus is still out there. So we still have to see how this all transpires over 1-2 years before we pat ourselves on the back too enthusiastically, I think, although I agree with you. Obviously, we've got the thing under control in this country at the moment, which is a good thing. I do want to ask you, Claire Chandler, about the Four Corners report from Monday night. I was hypercritical of that. I think it was gutter journalism from the ABC. It was directed at damaging the coalition. It was very partisan. It tried to destroy the reputation of two of your colleagues, two ministers, Alan Tudge and Christian Porter. The only fig leaf, the only little pretext for public interest here from the ABC was that they said that they were unveiling a culture, a misogynistic culture, if you like, inside the coalition, inside the Liberal Party. As a female Liberal politician, do you have any concerns about a sexist culture in the party in which you operate?
Absolutely not, Chris. I mean, I have been involved in this issue of how the Liberal Party engages with women for quite some time now. I led a piece of work in the Tasmanian division of the party some years ago now, looking at how we could engage better with women, pre-select more women. I'm very honoured to be serving in this place with two fantastic Liberal women from Tasmania, Bridget Archer, member for Bass, and Senator Wendy Askew. And in our state parliament, we've increased the number of Liberal women women quite significantly since that review was first undertaken by myself and former Tasmanian Premier Will Hodgman some years ago. So I think we are making excellent progress, and no, that has never been my experience in the party, one of sexism and misogyny, not at all.
Do you think the ABC needs to be reined in? Someone needs to point out what their charter says about objectivity and fairness?
I think that after the report on Monday night, yes, that is certainly a question for the ABC board as to whether or not that program was in alignment with its charter.